Good evening. You're watching Arirang News at 8. It's Monday, December 23rd here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo Ji-hye. We begin this evening with rail strike that entered its third week on this Monday, with subway and high-speed train operations running at 70 to 80% of normal levels. The state-run rail operator has announced plans to hire hundreds of new and experienced workers. The union refuses to budge, especially after police raided its umbrella office. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
As the railway strike rumbles into its third week, rail operations around the country remain severely impacted. To prepare for a prolonged strike, Korea announced on Monday that it plans to hire hundreds of experienced workers and interns who will be ready to work from January. Korea's bullet train KTX services are running at just 70% of normal levels. Commuters in the capital region are also being inconvenienced, as subway services in Seoul were reduced to 85% of normal levels starting Monday morning. The country's industrial sector is feeling the pinch worse than the public, however, with cargo train services running at just a third of normal levels. Some companies say they are running low on supplies amid the gridlock. Adding to the frosty atmosphere between the strikers and the authorities, there was a major standoff Sunday between union members and riot police in downtown Seoul.
We will carry out the arrest warrants for the rail union leaders.
Hoping to round up key union leaders, hundreds of riot police surrounded the main office of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, a militant union umbrella group. Union members created a human blockade, locked doors with chains, and used fire hoses to push back police as they tried to enter the premises. Denouncing the police's actions, the KCTU announced that its members will launch a strike from this coming Saturday, December 28th. The government continues to demand the striking rail workers return to work.
It has come to a point where the government cannot tolerate this any longer, as the prolonged illegal strike is inconveniencing the public and affecting the national economy.
Over 130 union workers taken into custody Sunday are currently under investigation, but the union leaders the police were hoping to get managed to get away. The strike started after the state-run rail operator Korea decided to create a subsidiary for a new KTX service, a move union members say is the first step toward privatization. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
In response to the escalating tensions surrounding the railway strike, President Park Geun-hye has defended the government's decision to send riot police to the protest site. And meanwhile, Korea's two rival parties have also responded to the government's use of force in Sunday's raid, but each had different ideas about how to resolve the conflict. Our Kim Hyun-gil has more.
Speaking at a meeting with her top secretaries on Monday, President Park Geun-hye stressed that the government should stick to its principles in dealing with the railway strike.
당장 어렵다는 이유로 원칙 없이 적당히 타협하고 넘어간다면 우리 경제 사회의 미래를 기약할 수 없을 것입니다.
Pundits say her comments reflect the Park administration's determination to stick to its principles and remain firm in dealing with the railway protest. Korea's rival parties had mixed reactions to a police raid that played out over a tense 12-hour period on Sunday as the rail strike rolled into its 15th day on Monday. Civic groups have since issued a series of statements denouncing the government's use of force in the raid on the headquarters of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, an umbrella labor group. The ruling's Henry Party has defended the police action, saying it was justified because union leaders had defied their arrest warrants.
Using the police against an illegal strike is what the government ought to do to protect the rights of its citizens.
The main opposition Democratic Party moved quickly to protest the raid, demanding that three related parliamentary committees open sessions on Monday to find a peaceful settlement to the dispute. DP Chairman Kim Han-gil criticized the government's handling of the matter, saying the raid highlighted the Park administration's unilateral and dogmatic method of governance.
The government's use of force is not legitimate when discussion can be held to resolve the situation.
The DP has advocated for new legislation specifically designed to ban the privatization of the bullet train service. The Saenuri Party rejected that but proposed the two parties sign a joint resolution stating that both parties are against the privatization of Korail. 김현길, Arirang News.
At the nation's top office, President Park Geun-hye is planning on spreading a little holiday cheer over Lunar New Year's this coming January by granting pardons to prisoners who committed crimes because they were struggling to make ends meet. Speaking at a meeting with her top secretaries on Monday, President Park said the pardons would benefit the nation, that those who were convicted of corruption or from the leadership class of society would be excluded. President Park did not pardon anyone on National Liberation Day in August, following through and campaign pledged to refrain from using her right to do so. Opposition parties on Monday submitted a joint bill demanding a special probe separate from the one being conducted by the prosecution into allegations that state institutions meddled in last year's presidential election. Her Kim Hyun-ji reports from the National Assembly.
A bill that calls for a special separate investigation into allegations that state agencies interfered in last year's presidential election has been submitted to the National Assembly. The bill was drafted jointly by the main opposition Democratic Party, the minor opposition Justice Party, and independent lawmaker An Chol-soo. It targets the Defense Ministry, the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, the Ministry of Security and Public Administration, and the Unification Ministry, in addition to the spy agency, whose former director is standing trial for allegedly ordering agents to post online messages to sway public opinion in favor of then-ruling party candidate and now President Park Geun-hye. In addition, the bill says civilians who are believed to have taken part in illegal activities should also be subject to a special probe. Further, the bill says the probe should target the presidential office, the spy agency, the prosecution, and the police for allegedly making attempts to downsize and conceal the results of earlier investigations and tamper with them. As for who should lead the special probe, the bill says a parliamentary committee should recommend 2 candidates and one be selected afterward. Saying President Park benefited the most from the electioneering scandal, Democratic Party leader Kim Han-gil stressed that a special independent investigation was necessary.
I repeat once again that if the Park administration and the ruling Saenuri Party do not accept our proposal, they will face an even stronger resistance from the public.
The ruling Saenuri Party strongly condemned the opposition's move.
To say that the prosecution's probe is poor and demand a separate investigation now is an attempt by the opposition to carry this issue into next year's local elections in June and use it to their advantage.
It remains unclear whether the joint bill will lead to the appointment of a special investigator, as launching a probe requires a majority of lawmakers to be in attendance in the plenary session and a majority of those voting for it. The ruling Saenuri Party holds 155 seats in the 300-member parliament. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
We have about 6 months to go until Koreans go to local polls to elect local lawmakers and the heads of regional governments. And already political parties have begun gearing up for the upcoming elections. For more on the significance and major issues of contention that may draw the spotlight, we go one-on-one with Dr. Kim Ji-yoon, Director of the Public Opinion Studies Center at the Asan Institute. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So how important are the June 4th local elections, and what would victory mean for both parties?
Well, a lot of people say that the local election, which is happening in the middle of the presidency, so it's sort of having a characteristic of midterm evaluation for the President Park Geun-hye's administration. But by the time the local election is taking place, it's probably the 1 year and 4 months passed since its inauguration, so it's a little bit early to say that it's midterm evaluation. But still, having said that, if DP wins, then they probably say, well, see, that's the public's judgment and how people think about the Park Geun-hye government. And I heard that for that same reason, the Saenuri Party is preparing rigorously to win in the local election. And particularly, they really would like to win the election landslide and to show and seal the deal. Just over a year long, disputes about the NIS scandal and the presidential election.
Right,
so that means a lot for
on.
both parties.
Of course. I mean, there's been a great deal of attention on whether the two parties will repeal the system of nominating the candidates for local councils. Now,
Right.
why is this issue attracting so much interest, and do you think they will go through with this?
Well, we start to have the party nomination process for the local council since 2006. That was based on the ruling of the Constitutional Court of Korea and based on the freedom of speech. Well, because that was kind of under the criticism because it's ruining the grassroots democracy and it's just another party, the central party effect is filtering into the local the politics too. But the thing is, well, first of all, the National Assemblymen, they practically have the nomination power, so they are not really into that process. And secondly, that is kind of voting behavior theory, but people are not really diligent enough to see and watch and do the homework and who to vote for. So usually they rely on the party label, and then once the party label is gone, then they rely on the incumbency. And thanks to the very good performance in 2010, and DP is kind of dominating most of the local council members and the heads of local governments, particularly in the Seoul metropolitan area. So obviously, maybe they do better without the party label, the DP, Democratic Party. So it's not really ideal situation for Saenuri Party and also Ahn Cheol-soo's new party, if there is any. Well, the DP proposed the repealing the nomination process in local council quite a long time ago, but the Saenuri Party is not responding yet quickly, and then they are actually not really into it because that means that for that reason that I explained. But the Saenuri Party also cannot really reject the DP's proposal because it was President Park Geun-hye's campaign promise. If they reject, then it's so obvious that they and also President Park Geun-hye is going to be very heavy under criticism that she broke the election promise again. So what I heard is it's as a second option, Saenuri Party is considering agreeing with the not repealing the nomination process for the local council members, but to remain the nomination power for the local government's head. So that's kind of compromise that you're thinking of.
I see. You earlier mentioned independent lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo, who is also a strong candidate in last year's presidential election. Now, he announced his intention to establish a new political party. Do you think this would have any impact on the outcome of the upcoming elections?
Well, although the party is not yet established, we do the recent survey poll, and then his hypothetical party is garnering almost 25% of support, which is pretty impressive. And the Saenuri Party is getting like 35%, and the DP, Democratic Party, is getting 10% of the votes. So, but the actual election result is not really determined by the support simply, but it's also determined by the electoral systems. And under the Korean electoral system, the third minor party, it's really hard for them to survive. But at this point, I don't really know which party is the third minor party, is Ahn Cheol-soo's party or DP. But so for that reason, it's not going to be that easy, but still Ahn Cheol-soo is quite strong. But one thing for sure is that DP and Ahn Cheol-soo's new party, they are going to split the progressive and the moderate young votes for obvious reason, and it may work for the Saenuri Party. So it's very likely that we are going to see the pre-electoral cooperation or coordination between the opposition parties.
I see. Well, what key provinces or political figures do you think we should look out for?
Well, its local election is determined not by the party labels. It is determined by party labels, but also it has its own local issues, so it's very complicated. But obviously, of course, the Seoul mayor election is a really big race. The incumbent mayor Park Won-soon is going to run, obviously, and Ahn Cheol-soo's party, they're thinking about Lee Ge-an, who is a former representative, and from the Saenuri Party, there's a big names coming out, like Dr. Jeong Mong-jun and the Minister Cho Yun-sun and former Prime Minister Kim Hwang-sik, also the candidates. Besides Seoul, I'll probably carefully watch over the Gyeonggi province gubernatorial race. Like now they are thinking about Nam Kyung-pil, Saenuri Party, but although he's not really ready for that, he's thinking about another race in in July. And also Chungnam, the current incumbent An Hee-jung is going to run again, and also Gyeongnam province, the gubernatorial election. The current Hong Jun-pyo, the Governor Hong Jun-pyo, is not really popular, I heard. And then that was once held by the Minjudang, so the DP. So it maybe was of note.
I know it's quite early to tell, but how do you think both parties will fare in the upcoming elections?
It is too premature to say anything, and well, we'll just see. I mean, again, it's kind of local things matters a lot. It plays a lot. So you have to see each province, each district, and then, well, all those strategies also different and the forms depending on the district.
Well, we'll certainly keep that in mind. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for joining us this evening.
It's my pleasure.
Touch base with journalists, experts, and analysts who are taking the pulse of Asia's heartbeat.
South Korea's defense minister.
In a lively half hour, join Arirang's Yoo Ji-hye for the day's top stories, current affairs, business, technology trends, plus global weather forecasts and more. Arirang News. Every weeknight, live on Arirang TV.
More information out on North Korea, and a Seoul spy agency believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle Chang Song-taek was executed not because of an internal power struggle, but due to disputes over lucrative business projects. The agency also predicts North Korea is highly likely to carry out a provocation early next year. Han Daeun reports.
The fall of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle Chang Song-taek may not have been due to a power struggle like many had speculated. Chief of Seoul's National Intelligence Service Nam Jae-jun, while briefing the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee, said Chang apparently overstepped his bounds by getting involved in big business projects and that this was the main reason he was executed. The NI's chief explained Chang interfered in Pyongyang's most lucrative projects, mostly coal-related ones, sparking conflicts with the state's other financial agencies. Kim Jong-un ordered him to settle the disputes, but when Chang defied that order, he was executed for going against Kim's supreme leadership. As for Chang's wife and Kim Jong-un's aunt, Kim Kyung-hee, the intelligence chief said, unlike many had thought, she has no health problems, but is rather staying out of the public eye for the moment. Nam also warned of a possible provocation by the North early next year, sometime between January and March, pointing out that North Korea's artillery units are being reinforced and more military exercises are being held. Nam said Pyongyang could forge ahead with provocations targeting the South in order to shift people's attention away from the instability domestically. Nam added the reclusive state is ready to conduct a fourth nuclear test at any time. Meanwhile, the NI's chief denied all reports that some of Chang's close aides are seeking asylum in China, saying there was no truth to any of them. Han Daeun, Arirang News.
The economic gap between the two Koreas remains wide. New data from Statistics Korea on Monday shows that South Korea's per capita gross national income was nearly 19 times larger than that of North Korea's last year. The per capita GNI for the South was estimated at around 25 million won, or roughly $24,000, while the figure for North Korea was around $1,200. South Korea's total trade volume was also over 150 times larger than the North's $6.8 billion. The only sector in which North Korea outperformed the South was in coal production. North Korea produced about 26 million tons of coal, around 10 times more than the South. Korea laid out an ambitious roadmap to mold itself into Northeast Asia's financial hub back in 2003. And now 10 years later, Seoul's financial industry still lags far behind its Asian neighbors. What's brought Korea to this point, and where is the nation's financial industry headed? Yoo Ji-hye tells us more.
While Korea is home to manufacturing giants like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG, Korea's financial sector had lagged far behind, despite government efforts to make Seoul a Northeast Asian financial capital on par with Hong Kong and Singapore. The Seoul International Finance Center was built with an aim to attract multinational financial companies. But after a year since its opening, Seoul's tallest and glossiest buildings now stand as a stark symbol of the country's failure to become a financial capital. The center, located in the heart of a bustling financial district in Yeouido, was a $1.4 billion project. But today, only one of the three buildings is fully occupied. The second building is at about half capacity, and the third completely empty.
Simply put, Korea is not an attractive place to invest. The market is small and the competition among domestic financial companies is already so fierce that there's not much profit to gain from Korea.
Given the low prospect for growth, foreign banks in Korea have little incentive to try and expand. In the past 10 years, the number of branches and offices of foreign financial companies has shrunk from 79 to 62, a 20% drop. This called for a change of direction. Instead of making Seoul a financial hub, taking domestic financial firms overseas to compete in the global market. This, according to a blueprint unveiled by the Financial Services Commission last month. Experts say it's a belated but welcome move.
Korean financial companies have no choice but to go abroad, given that the domestic market is saturated. It's important that these companies realize that they need to set out long-term goals.
The key, he added, is to break away from their tendency to seek short-term profits and to commit to improving their overseas operations over the next 10 to 20 years. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
Some good news on the labor front. More than 400,000 new jobs are expected to be created in Korea next year. The Korea Employment Information Service on Monday predicted an economic growth rate of 3.8% for 2014 and a total employment rate of nearly 60%. That'll be a rise of 0.3 percentage points from this year, but still far from the 70% target set by the Park Geun-hye administration before the end of her term. News isn't all rosy, though. The report suggests that young people will continue to struggle in 2014 since the job market is likely to favor those with more experience. While the number of employed people aged 30 and above rose this year, the number of 20-somethings with jobs dropped by nearly 60,000. Then how about the U.S. economy? The International Monetary Fund is optimistic that it will expand at a faster rate in the coming year. Managing Director Christine Lagarde, in an interview with NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday, said that the U.S. economy is projected to expand 2.6% in 2014 after growing 1 percentage point less this year. Lagarde also said her outlook for the U.S. gross domestic product is positive following the Federal Reserve's decision last week to start scaling back its monetary stimulus in January. She added she was also encouraged by the recent drop in the U.S. unemployment rate. Taking it now to Thailand, where weeks of anti-government protests continue. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra had hoped that calling early elections for February would quell the unrest, but tensions spilled over again on Sunday and Monday. Connie Kim has the latest.
Despite protesters' efforts to block candidates from registering for the upcoming February elections in Thailand, political parties began doing just that on Monday. Representatives for some of Thailand's political parties started arriving at Thai Japanese Stadium at 3 a.m. local time. 9 parties were able to register there, while 25 others signed up at a nearby police station. While potential candidates were gearing up for an election in February, protesters remained steadfast in their opposition. On Sunday, tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Bangkok, warning the government not to proceed with preparations. CNN reports that as many as 150,000 people showed up for Sunday's protests throughout Bangkok, including outside of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra's house. Protest leader Suthep Thaaksuban warned the government and election commission that reforms must first take place prior to the elections. The protest leaders said they will continue to rally if Prime Minister Yingluck remains in power. They argue that the Yingluck government is corrupt and is controlled by Yingluck's brother Thaksin Shinawatra, the nation's former leader who was overthrown in a military coup in 2006. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for a checkup. Now, Bo-kyung, we had mild winter weather here in Korea today, but how's the weather on Christmas Eve, which is tomorrow, shaping up?
Well, Ji-hye, we will have more moderate temperatures, but unlike the previous 2 years, this Christmas won't be a white one. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a high-pressure system from China, which is why we're seeing clear skies across the map. Well, tomorrow will be another mild winter day, so no worries of winter chills. However, showers are forecast on the East Coast regions, not to mention that those of you in Jeju will have a rainy Christmas, and that precipitation will spread throughout the country on Thursday. Taking a closer look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -5 degrees with a high of 5. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju top out at 7. Moving on to other regions, Jeju's morning low reaches 5 degrees before hitting 9 in the afternoon. All the while, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang peak at 4 and -3 degrees respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll see you again after 10.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's a broadcast on this Monday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates in our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.